Hey guys, how's it going? This is day 5 of the little mini series on how to deal with noisy neighbors, and it's a little dim and dark because the sun has set and this day almost got away from me, and I was like, oh, my video. I didn't forget about you. So as promised, this 5th video is giving you some tools to help deal with when you have noisy neighbors. And if you haven't watched my previous videos, I encourage you to do so, especially the ones in this particular series, because I kind of build off of this premise that actually it's not the neighbors that are pissing you off, it's the thoughts that are in your mind. And so day 5 here, yesterday I focused on when you're in like crisis mode, like you're really agitated, you're already down that rabbit hole of being angry or upset or whatever, how to take care of yourself in that moment. And that's more about like distraction and soothing and all that kind of stuff. Today's tools are for when you're feeling like a little more regulated, when you're not in that super stressful place. In fact, I encourage doing this kind of work when you're in a calmer place. And then when the noise happens, you're more prepared for it, and you've kind of been practicing this kind of stuff when it's a little bit easier. So yesterday I named a few kind of clumps of thoughts that happen. I named that you might be in a judgmental state, which doesn't feel good when we're judging the neighbors and we're inventing stories about their character, for instance, about how they're rude or they don't give a fuck or they're whatever. I'm a better neighbor than them because I don't do that. Another clump of thoughts, for lack of a better term, I guess group. I like clump. All right, clump of thoughts. Feeling like you're trapped, feeling like it's never going to stop and you're a victim. Another really unsettling group of thoughts is around fear. Kind of similar to the victimized thing, but just afraid of if it's going to get worse, afraid of who else might live there, afraid that you'll never find a better place, those kind of things. And then there's thoughts that sound like should, which are essentially arguing with reality, which are guaranteed to come with suffering. When you're saying it shouldn't be like this, or it should be different, they should be more respectful, they should be quiet. That just never works. It doesn't matter how many people you get to sign your petition about the way things should be. The fact is they just are this way now, and how are you going to deal with it? So if you're dealing with shoulds, the thought work needs to be around, well, it is, now what? So in naming those 4 kind of main clusters of thoughts that I have found myself having around this issue, I find that there's kind of complementary thoughts that I want to cultivate that can counterbalance those or counteract them, I guess. So for instance, if I'm having really judgmental thoughts, if I notice that I'm thinking just really shitty things about the other people, like, God, what pieces of shit, it's not going to be really helpful to start coming up with more positive thoughts that have to do with being a victim, if this makes sense. So I've drawn little diagram to arrows. So like if I'm in a judgmental place, a more helpful group of thoughts to have around that I can practice are thoughts about compassion. Like any kind of practice you might have or thoughts you might want to write down and try on for size about, is there any little like even inch of human kindness or compassion that you can cultivate for those people? So can you start to imagine another story? Like in my case, when I'm judging my neighbors, I barely know them. I have nothing to go off of except my assumptions about how they're behaving and what I make that mean. But if I think about, like, is there any chance that these are good dudes? Like, can I talk myself out of all the judgment just for a minute and just think, like, is there anything at all that I've noticed or that I could at least believe that could be equally true about their character that's good? So one of the things I came up with that one was they were having all these loud parties on the weekends, and I was like, God, a lot of people must really like them because they get like 20 people to come into the backyard. So maybe they're fun. Maybe they're fun to be around. Maybe they're generous hosts. Maybe they're very open. Maybe they're kind and loving. That's just one example. The other one was when the dog was really barking. I tried to be like, okay, these guys took in a dog. They want to care for a dog. There must be some good there. Obviously, I believe there's good in everyone, and there's probably more good than not. It's just really easy to get caught up in this really negative story about people, and it can feel a lot better to start to push back with a little, like, hey, they're probably not, like, the worst human in the world. They're just doing this one thing that I don't like. So that can help. If you're having the clump of I'm a victim, I am trapped thoughts, it's really helpful to remember that you always have a choice. So maybe you don't have the choice to like have your apartment be quiet all the time, but do you have a choice of where to live? Do you have to be in the house at this moment? a lot of things we just sort of assume that we don't have a choice. Like, say the music starts at midnight and you have to work at 5 in the morning, and I tell you, well, you do have a choice. You could leave your house and go somewhere else and go for a walk. You might not want to do that thing, but you do have that option. And for me, it's been really helpful, even if I don't take that choice, and even if it's not the ideal situation, something about remembering that, like, oh, I do still have choices. You know, I have the choice to just fucking pack a backpack and leave all my shit in here and walk out tomorrow and never live in this place again. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make do. But there's just something that calms that really freaked out lizard brain down when I just remind it, like, we do have a choice. Since you're choosing to stay here with this, let's find ways to deal with it. When you're in fear, so if the thoughts you're having that are causing suffering about the noisy neighbors have to do with fear, like one that came up for me a lot was, I fear that I'm not going to be able to get the rest I need. I need a lot of quiet. I can question that. Is that true? I won't be able to sleep. Is that true? So I kind of push past those by bringing up thoughts that prove otherwise, like the fact that I used to hop freight trains and slept on those bitches, and they're loud. I could sleep soundly in a boxcar. I can actually sleep soundly most anywhere. I can fall asleep on the bus. I can fall asleep outside. I can fall asleep when there's noise, apparently. Again, it's maybe not the ideal situation. I have stories about how, well, when I go to sleep, I want it to be quiet. But the fact is, like, if I need my rest, if my body needs to sleep, it will find a way to sleep with the noise. Now, that's just me. You're going to want to find your own thought to deal with the fears that you're having. The point is that our brain throws up the thoughts that are causing suffering, and we take them on as if they're true, but they're just thoughts and they're just stories, and we're choosing to believe them, and we can equally and proactively choose new thoughts to think and practice and believe. Again, this takes practice. Like, I was in the habit of thinking all this negative shit about noisy neighbors for a long time, but this is why they're called tools. Like, this is why I'm having a video about this. Like, this is a new way to look at things, and we can practice this. And I have been practicing this, and it's getting better every day. And then the last group of thoughts that I wanted to offer something around was when you're thinking shoulds. So this has just taken practice for me to just sit with and practice acceptance of, like, this thing is happening. Like, me fighting it or arguing with the fact that it's happening is causing suffering. And I don't really have any tools to offer other than just practice sitting with that idea and let that kind of sink in. And I've noticed for myself, when I just stay open to believing that and recognizing that that's what's really going on, it eventually does start to, like, sift down from my intellectual consciousness down into my heart, into my body, where I start to experience it as reality. And before, when I would always be, like, tense and in opposition to reality as it was happening, now I feel like I have a lightness around it, a little bit of sense of humor, and I can just sort of let things be the way they are, and then I make choices from there, or I think better thoughts from that space. I did hear of something once that has helped me in this situation. I can't remember if it was like a mindfulness technique or where it came from, but it was imagining yourself as sort of a permeable substance, where, like, the way I used to experience noisy neighbors was this sound, this thing that was happening to me, and then it was getting lodged in my body, usually like in my guts and my chest and my shoulders, and I'd just be like, man, it was stuck in there, and it was just happening to me, and it was loud, and it was amplified because of my thinking and my resentment. But this exercise was about picturing yourself as just like this permeable, you're like a screen or something, and the sound just comes in and flows out. It comes in and flows out. That really helped me a lot, especially when I was living with really loud, obnoxious ones. So visualizing and breathing through that and having some kind of picture in your mind that's like, okay, this is just a sound, you know? Sound, this is another mantra that I had that really helped me. This is just a vibration in the air. All that sound actually is a vibration in the air. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. Like, that's been helpful to think about, is how we assign good and bad to all kinds of things, really, and to sounds. And recognizing that there is no good or bad except our thinking makes it so. I didn't write that. I can't remember who said it. But just whenever I'd start to hear that music or whatever the problem was, I just remember, like, this is a neutral sound. This is just a sound. And I don't have to make a story about it, you know? And that reminds me of something else that really helped. Oh, this came to me, and again, I can't remember where this came from, but it was the idea of like, would you be willing to lose your sense of hearing to not experience this again? So it was something about the idea of like, I can hear, and that's a huge gift. Not everyone can hear. And if me being able to hear means that sometimes I hear things that aren't my favorite things to hear, I would still definitely choose to hear. So I practiced this a lot, where I'd hear the noises that were upsetting me. My thoughts about them were upsetting me. And I would just start thinking about like, well, I'm grateful that I can hear. I'm so grateful that I have the ability to hear. I'm really good at hearing. I have sensitive hearing. And I could kind of turn it around as something to be grateful for. And another thing along those same lines was, I got this from Cara Lowenthal, who I've mentioned before. She has a great podcast called Unfuck Your Brain. Highly recommend. Go check it out. She talks about like, well, I'll use my example. So if you had told me when I was looking at this apartment, when I found it, and it was like, oh my God, this place is so adorable. I love it. It's my dream apartment. It's everything I want and more. And if someone right before I signed the lease was like, hey, you should know there's really thin walls and you're going to deal with some kind of crappy neighbors and it's going to be a little stressful and a little loud sometimes. Do you still want it? And I can still say every time, like, fuck yeah, I'll take it. So that can be really helpful too. Just imagine like, whatever's going on, is it really that bad? And if it is, then you start making plans from an accepting place so that you can think more clearly of how to move, how to get out of it. Ask for help. I asked for help from someone that I really respect and admire, and I just, there's a difference between like just complaining about the thing and genuinely going to people that you think have good insight or advice and saying like, look, I'm struggling with this issue. This is me on my old-timey phone with a cord and a landline. I don't really have that. I just remember them. Anyways. And I asked her, I was like, hey, I respect you. I think you have good wisdom and serenity. What do I do about this? And she thought for a minute. One of the things I love about her, she's actually thoughtful and thinks before she speaks. And she goes, it's just this, it's so funny, but this image is coming to me of Post-it notes all over the house with prayers for the dog. Because the thing I was really riled up about was hearing the dog howling. And that was amazing because she didn't know this, but I already write positive things on Post-its, like these new thoughts that I'm telling you to practice. I do it and I practice it and I put them on notes and Post-its and stick them all over my house to be reminded, because this shit takes practice. And so the fact that she said that was so funny because that's how I roll anyways. And then this thing about that she said prayers for the dog was like, oh, it just opened this tender place in me that I'd already been trying to get to about like, hey, this dog is crying. Can I get to a place where I sort of feel bad for it rather than being angry that it's crying? So anyways, that helped me. There are a whole bunch of other tools and practices and teachers. I'm going to leave you with my 3 favorite ones that have helped me, really helped inform how I look at the world and how I practice better ways of thinking. And better, I mean, that make me feel better and happier and more comfortable in the world. I've mentioned these people before, but I will mention them again. The top one, well, they're all really great. I would definitely recommend Byron Katie's work. She actually has The Work. I think you can go to thework.com. She's got free workshops. She's got podcasts. She's got videos of her doing this work where we just unravel our suffering by interrogating every thought lovingly, not even interrogating it, but we just ask 4 questions and a turnaround. And you ask it, is it true? You think about how you feel when you hold that thought and how uncomfortable that is, and then you think what you would be like without the thought, and then you do turnarounds. And it's just so enlightening, and I love this work, and it is just the cure for what ails you, hands down, all the time. So check that out. And then 2 life coaches that I really admire that are doing, they do a really great job of teaching this stuff and breaking this down and helping people practice like what it looks like to have a circumstance and how that informs our thinking and our feelings and our actions and thus our reality. Brooke Castillo, who I highly recommend. Obviously, I already said that. Sorry, I'm getting sleepy and it's dinner time. Brooke Castillo, Castillo is the last name, and she has the Life Coach School podcast, and you can check that out anywhere on the interwebs. And then Cara Lowenthal is a student of Brooke Castillo's, or got her coach certification from her, but she teaches it in her own really fantastic way, with a twist that has to do with feminism and body acceptance. and unfucking your brain, the brain being fucked by patriarchy and other such funky systems. And it's Unfuck Your Brain podcast. So run, check them out. They're awesome. Thank you for being here. I hope this series was helpful. If you have any more questions or want more help with this, I'm always happy to talk more about it. So leave your comments if you got them. Otherwise, let's hit 100 subscribers, y'all. And then I'll name this and we'll just keep going and see what this is. All right. Take care. Bye.